update in the saga?
Oh, Baruch Hashem, we're fine. It was funny. I'm like starting to like try and cook dinners for my family.
Oh,
And
wow. Cook
yeah,
dinners,
we're
and it
like,
feels good. They just get
it
regular,
does, but then like,
simple, non-gourmet
but then I'm
food.
stuck with like, oh my God, I thought I had breadcrumbs to make schnitzel and I didn't have breadcrumbs. Tonight was one of those nights where I'm like, I planned to make schnitzel and I literally had like 0 ingredients. I was like, shit.
Good. You can be like everyone else and fry some eggs, noodles and cheese, tuna, all the other stuff that we do when we do it. And it's all fun.
That's
It's all
right.
good.
Baruch
one's ever
Hashem.
suffered.
This is easy stuff to deal with, right?
Exactly. These should be the challenges. As long as our kids don't make us too crazy, we can handle it. All right, all good, Sion. I'm so glad you're back. I actually was on time and I was running to get my phone to tell everyone I'm starting. And then I saw you got on and off in the interim. So I'm so glad you made it back. All right. So we are getting started. This is our 3rd session on this topic. And what we're up to touching on is the idea of personal appearance. I like started it last week and we were like at the end and then there was all these questions and I felt those questions were more important. So I said, let me just put it on the side. There's always next week. According to our sages, according to God's perspective, Torah's perspective, it's really important for a woman to try each one, it's not a beauty contest here, but for a woman to really emphasize the idea of looking beautiful. For each person, what that means. For some people, that means makeup. Some people are like, no, I hate myself in makeup. Your clothing, again, not meaning you should be in something uncomfortable to you, not meaning you should be in something that you're scared to get it dirty as you're in your house cooking and with your kids all day. Obviously, we're saying you could look beautiful in clothes that are washable. You could look beautiful with or without makeup, whatever's better for you. But just we have this concept. It's like how the world works. Like you have weekday clothes, and then there's a concept in Torah of Shabbos clothing. It's a concept in Torah. There's a concept in Torah of special clothing or items for a holiday, for a chag, for a yontif. That is literally a concept in Judaism, because Shabbos is a concept of pleasure, but the holiday is a concept of joy, which we're told is a higher level, and therefore we're told prettier clothing, jewelry,
Can I ask you a
that
question
bring
about
joy
this?
to women. Sure.
Shouldn't you always be in Shabbos clothing because you're supposed to always believe that Mashiach's coming right this second? So you should be ready to
Definitely
greet
not.
Mashiach?
No way.
No, I don't do that, but I'm wondering because I know people that like believe, that.
No, you should be a mother and be normal and comfortable. No, totally not. You should be dressed up all the time because Mashiach's coming. No.
So let's look at from his clothing. We're not looking at clothing from him. Sorry.
I do not dress like that.
Let's look at from us. We don't see your clothing. You're safe. The only one that anyone sees here is me. Let's look at this idea of clothing in the light of what we're saying, and then I can touch on what Firma said, which is actually not so non-relevant. It really isn't. What I'm saying is, according to the sages, a woman who makes an effort to look beautiful is praiseworthy. It's not considered, oh yeah, she's really superficial, or a superficial man needs a woman that does this. So either the woman's doing it because her man's superficial or she's superficial. No, it's actually considered something praiseworthy. And it's actually a story related, a vignette in the Talmud about a great sage. It might have been Reb Chia, but I honestly didn't look it up. But in my back of my brain, I think it's Reb Chia. It might have been someone else. A great sage, honorable, coming back, somehow he was in the fields, but with his students, because in those days, it was considered honorable for the sages to also actually do physical work, but also be with their students. And when he's coming back, his wife comes out to greet him, which is a nice tip. And she's dressed so beautifully that his students are like, I don't know, it's a little weird. And he said, no, this is so special. And the sages say this is admirable, that she clearly made an effort. I don't know what she looked like, but she clearly made such an effort that the students thought that's a little bit much. And this Torah says, the sages say no, and the Reb Chia, the Tana said no. This is special. This is really special. And they don't say why it's special. They say it's special. my understanding of why it's special is because it's not easy. Like Shira's knee-jerk response to Firma's comment, hello, no, it's not easy. And it means in my head that the sages are praising this woman for prioritizing her marriage, for understanding that God gave us beauty, and every woman has beauty, every Jewish woman has beauty, and God gave us beauty for a reason. And we should use it for that reason. It's fine, you going out, you want to get dressed, you want to look beautiful, great. So your friends should all appreciate your beauty, great. But the real reason, maybe God gave it to you also for any other areas of your life. You're a professional, you're in business, you represent the Jewish people. It's good to always look good. But God really, really wants you to use it in your relationship with your husband, even without saying anything. If you make a conscious effort to look good when he's coming home, it gives him this message. I'm actually somewhere on my wife's radar. You know, she's thinking about me. I didn't realize. She knows when I walk in the door. I wouldn't have noticed. She's on the phone if she's dealing with the kids, if it's homework, if it's supper. I sort of like sneak in the house. And she knows I'm coming. And she made an effort for me. That's such a huge message. That's such a huge import on someone's shalom bayis and the relationship between a husband and wife. And the sages say, and here we're not talking about to enhance shalom bayis situation seemingly, but just this is a priority. I'm dressing up for the event, for the priority. So some people say, my husband doesn't notice. So some people, and sometimes even men will say that. Like I think of someone who said she used to always put on makeup before her husband came home. And then she mentioned it to him and he was like, oh, I didn't realize. Well, I guess maybe that's a compliment. I thought you always look like this. Some men are very non-noticing. Some men are truly non-noticing. But every man notices on some level. For some, it might be perfume. For another one, it might be, again, just you're wearing a brighter color or a more appealing fit, or, you know, every person has to understand their husband and what they would appreciate. It's like, you made that effort for me. And it's something that I think you look great. So if you say, oh, I could be in the greatest schmata in the world, my husband still thinks I look great. That's very possible. But it's still not good for you to walk around looking like a schmuck. It's not good for your husband. It's actually not good for your kids. It's actually not good for you. It's actually not good for anybody. Nobody gains when you walk around looking like a schmata, because if you walk around looking like a schmata, you start feeling like a schmata. So I think there has to be a discrimination, and I think this was Shira's response to Firma, between walking around like a schmata and being comfortable. Obviously, you want to be comfortable in your home. There's a reason why work clothes are not what you wear in your house, and your work clothes are dry clean only, or you have to sit a certain way, and you have to, you don't want your kids touching you, like, you know, if you're in shul and like you're so nervous your kids shouldn't touch you here, touch you there, you know. So obviously you don't want to be dressed in the house in something like that. So you can find things that are very comfortable and washable, but still make you look good. And if you I'm most comfortable when I'm in my pajamas, when I'm in really relaxed clothing, fine. So get really pretty pajamas. That's fine. You know.
I have a question, Mrs. Stern.
Sure.
What if your husband works from home and he's always around? Like, it's not like, oh, get tidied up before he comes home. Like, you always have to be like.
So it's so if your husband, first of all, if your husband works from home, it's in general a pressure for a lot of reasons.
Tell me about it.
So hopefully if your husband works from home, he's organized and has hours and the door is closed and he's at work in the room.
No.
If it's not in that fantasy situation, it's hard for a lot of reasons. It's hard because it's interesting. The Lubavitcher Rebbe actually says, not talking about a husband working at home, but just the idea of a husband and wife and what's a healthy relationship. And he says that it's really good if each one has their own independent pursuits, job, occupations during the day. And then at night, when they come together, they can share with each other what they did that day. Meaning the Rebbe is implying a little space is healthy. When there's a little space that you actually are not stepping over each other all day long, And then it's so nice at night to talk about it. So if your husband does work from home, even and you can't impose this on him, but I'm saying this is just in general for anybody in that situation, of course, now during the pandemic, which CTU thinks is still raging very strong. So it's more people are challenged than before, obviously, because there's people whose husbands didn't used to work at home, but have worked at home since March of 2020. And it's really healthy to take this piece of advice of the Rebbe and try to find a way to create separation during the daytime so that there is the idea of like, we're separate, we're breathing, we're doing our own thing. And then, oh, it's so nice to see you. Oh, you were here all day. I was here all day. You were there all day. So again, it might be a little artificial. It might be hard, especially if it's only coming from one spouse's end to do this. But this was actually the point the Rebbe was making there, that it's good for a relationship if there's some space, if there's some separation. And we're not saying for a week, but even just for the 9 to 5, that's actually something very healthy. And of course, there are couples that are in business together. It always awes me because it seems like such a stressful thing to do. But there's plenty of couples that do it and they figure it out. But it's a challenge. Never assume it's not a challenge. It's actually a big challenge. But going back to Dorit's question, I was giving her free advice that she didn't ask for. Going back to Dorit's question, yeah, there is the concept. I don't know if you're reapplying your makeup every 2 hours because of course it fades. But the idea of just in general having this sense of I want to look good. Now, what I'm saying is we all on some level operate better when we look, when we feel, and that's part of feeling is when we look put together. Again, if you're put together in your pajamas, great. I'm not, I'm not giving any fashion codes here, but we all have that space when we're just schlepping around, when we look schleppy, when we feel schleppy, when we act schleppy. It's all part of a continuum. So for all of us, especially if you're working from home and you're home, or your home is being a housewife, which is the most beautiful and exalted work according to Judaism, and you're all day at home, not even with your husband around, that would give you some reason to have yourself more put together, and you still want to feel and look put together. Just you and your kids all day. And it's good to have something of like put together. It's just sort of like in homeschooling, right? Imagine, forget about the mothers wanting to be in pajamas all day. What about the kids that want to be in pajamas all day, right? What about when the kids are virtual learners and like, I have to get dressed to go to school, to turn on my computer, turn on my tablet. But it's a very healthy concept of like, this is where we learn and this is how we're sitting and this is how we're dressed. And it just creates more of a functional atmosphere. So even if you're, sorry for a long-winded answer to a short question, if your husband's around all day, I think it's better for you, even if he's not around all day, to feel like I'm put together. And B, I think it's good to try. But again, it might not mean makeup, but whatever it would mean. And honestly, I do think some men say, I think my wife is more beautiful without makeup. If you like yourself in makeup and he likes you not, that might be more of a conflict. If you know he likes you better without makeup, that's fine. But a certain way that makes you feel good. Now, so Froma said, when we started this off, Froma said that that there's a sense of Mashiach coming, and as Mashiach coming, we should all be dressed beautiful to be ready for Mashiach. So in general, of course, whatever works for you in the sense of like, wow, Mashiach's coming and I want to do things to feel I'm ready, whatever it is. What I did to express that readiness is many years ago, bought according to Chabad customs, we don't use called mayim achronim, the little bowl you have that you pour the water in like on the Shabbos table. We don't use it from silver, but it says that by Mashiach we will. So to express readiness for Mashiach, that's what I bought, to have that like, oh, we're so ready. We already have our silver mayim achronim. Someone else might say every day, I want to get dressed up a little nicer. Mashiach's coming. If that works for you, great. Whatever works for you to give you that sense of excitement and joy that Mashiach's coming is for sure a good thing. And it totally works here with this idea of, in general, excitement and joy that you're a Jewish woman and you want to look good and feel good. And for most of us, when we look good, it helps us feel good. But I just want to sort of bring out this point because sometimes we have this like erroneous notion that, well, I mean, that's not part of Judaism. Like Judaism is about being spiritual and being holy and being godly. And what in the world in Judaism has to do with me looking good? But as we've been saying throughout these times, there's a synergy here of the physical and the spiritual, and you're serving God with the physical. That's what he wants. And when you're looking good, whatever it translates in your world to looking good, and don't make yourself look good in a way that's not comfortable to you. Looking good and comfortable. If you look good and you're uncomfortable, it's not going to work. Looking good and at the same time being comfortable. And trust me, your husband notices more than he allows you to be aware of. It's a way of really bringing the spiritual into the physical. It's really, really, really powerful point. Some women say like, that's wrong. Like, why should my husband need me to look good for him? He should love me as I am and accept me as I am. And of course he should. We're not saying he shouldn't, but it's part of being a Jewish woman to have this sense of sovereignty. That's how we understand Kabbalistically the Jewish woman, the realm of Malchut, sovereign, regal, noble, attractive. It's actually interesting, according to Jewish law, if a woman's walking around in dirty clothing, if a husband wants, it could be grounds for divorce. Literally. Now you'd say, oh my gosh, a husband that would divorce his wife over that's crazy. I'm not disagreeing. But the fact that it's a legitimate grounds for divorce is showing our sage's perspective. So if someone thinks like, I'm too busy to deal with this, no. This is holy work. This is part of our holy, beautiful, enormously important obligation and responsibility and joy of being a wife, of being a mother, and of being a wife. And it's nice for your kids when you look better. You look better, you feel better, the home feels happier. It's a win-win-win situation all around. Anyone else had something they wanted to chime in on this? A rabbi once came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This was when the Rebbe was sitting Shiva after the passing of his wife. And he asked the Rebbe, what was the Rebbetzin to the Rebbe? That's sort of like a personal question. I don't know if you should ask questions like that during Shiva, but he did. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbetzin was my pnimi. My pnimi means my inner dimension. Like what makes a train move? The wheels, the conductor, the gasoline, the motor. So the Rebbe is saying she was my motor. I think that's a true statement in general, which is why I'm sharing it. We are the motors. We are our husband's motors. We are the pnimi. We inspire our husband to do what he needs to do. And when we nurture our husbands, and when we nurture the marriage, and when we make intimacy meaningful and real and significant, it helps him move. It helps him move. It really does. And as we said, this relates back to the Kabbalistic concept that God wants a home in this world. You say a dira, a home, the tachtonim, in the lowest realm. This world is the lowest realm, and God here exclusively wants his home. So we are representing that tachton. We are representing that lower dimension. We are sovereignty, which is spiritually called the lowest dimension, which will be highest by the Mashiach, as Fuma was mentioning. But right now, it's seemingly the lowest. We're the recipient. He's the giver, the initiator. And we want to create a marriage where those things are very healthy, where he really feels and is treated and is looked at as the mashpia. And we really feel and we're really treated and we're really honored as the recipient, as the malchut, as the mekabel. And sometimes it's a very hard message for us to absorb because it's like sort of the antithesis of Western philosophy on life. So when we've happened to be Americans, happen to be raised, you could be Israelis and also be raised in the 21st century with the modern perspective on a woman, which is just sort of a man with a slightly different body, it's a little hard to make a marriage work like that. It's a little hard to make the marriage work like God wants a marriage to work. So we have to shift ourselves and really integrate this understanding of, I want to look at God's prototype. I want to understand how God envisions a marriage. He made us. He wired us. He knows how we are more than we know ourselves. He knows what's best for us more than we understand. And this is what God is saying is a working, healthy marriage, where the man has all the ability to be the mashpia, the one who gives in a marriage, and the woman has all the ability to be the mekabel, to be the one who's the nurturer in a marriage. And a lot of times we lose those roles because, again, we haven't really been coached in them. You know, you weren't coached in them when you were 5 or when you were 10 or you were 15, you're 20, and then boom, suddenly you're supposed to be married and it's supposed to be natural. And for a lot of us, it's not natural at all. But this is really God's vision of a marriage. And in the dynamics, Kabbalistically, of a mashpia, one who's giving, and a mekabel, which means literally a recipient, there's a dynamics that the more you're the mekabel, the more you draw out from him to be the mashpia. The more you're in your feminine mode, the more you enable him to be in his masculine mode. And for some men, that's not a natural space to go. And that's why sometimes a wise woman is going to put herself in a very feminine mode to give her husband the message that it's safe for him to be in a masculine mode. Just as you could envision like a student and a teacher, right? Here's a teacher. They have all the knowledge, but they're just talking. No one's saying anything. So they give their lecture. But when the student starts asking questions, it pulls out of the teacher more and more and more. Like just happened a few minutes ago when Shira said something, Firma said something, Dorit said something. So it naturally pulled out of me more information than I would have otherwise said, right? Or, you know, another classical metaphor is a baby. When a baby nurses, as the baby nurses, the mother produces more and more milk. So the student who's interactive, engaging, draws out much more from the teacher. The child, the baby, as he's nursing, is drawing much out for the mother. So those I'm using as simple metaphors. We understand those. But in a marriage, it's very similar. The more I'm in the mikabel mode, the more I'm looking at my husband as the mashpia mode, the more I give him the power to be that person, to be that husband, and to be that father. The more I treat him as such, the more I look at him as such, the more I do things to put him in that space, the more he's able to do that. And the better and healthier it is for him, and for me, and for the marriage, and for the children. It's interesting, we see this actually also going all the way back to our matriarchs and patriarchs, where we're told that they were very different. The women, not surprising, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they were women. They were more grounded. They were more involved in the physical world. Sarah understood Yishmael's danger in a way that Avram did not. Rivka understood Esau's evil in a way that Yitzchak totally did not. And the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, they were more spiritual. They were more remote. They were more involved in lofty ideas, and they didn't see planet Earth as clearly. And that's why God said to Abraham, it's a great line. We should all mention it to our husbands if we want to like share Dvar Torah. Whatever Sarah says, listen to her. Why? Because she gets it. Because she's a woman. So when we're saying mashpia, mekabel doesn't mean that you don't get things better than your husband. We know you do, obviously. You're a woman. That's why you do. But somehow you have to get it and convey it while retaining your femininity. You have to be in that feminine space, and you have to think how to package this information, message, critical next step in our marriage or life while staying in the feminine mode. So there's the Mashpia Malchus and Mashpia Makabel, and at the same time, listen to Sarah. She knows what she's talking about. She gets this world more than you do. A woman gets it more than a man does, most of the time, about most things. So we've got to say it and convey it in a way that he's the Mashpia and we're the Makabel. That's actually going back to what Firma mentioned before. Firma said about Mashiach's reality. This is a very, very messianic way to live, because by Mashiach, we're told, the Arizal speaks about this, that the woman's energy will be supreme. Because again, the woman is the human embodiment of what is currently God's lowest dimension, but is truly God's highest. And in the times of Mashiach, it will be revealed that it's the highest. Malchus is the lowest of the 10 energies of God. It's the 10th, the lowest. By Mashiach, it was seen to be supreme. The woman, the moon, King David, the Jewish people versus the rest of the world, we're all embodiments of this Malchus. We all seem the lowest. By Mashiach will reveal that we're all actually the highest. So that's definitely the energy of a woman. So right now, when the man listens to the voice of the woman and understands that she gets it more, and we might call it motherly intuition, whatever term we use for how we just sometimes understand things, get things, see things. That's a very messianic life when the husband respects that the woman understands things better than he does. That's exactly how it'll be by Mashiach. But for now, we have to take what we know and then figure out a way to package it so we can convey the information, and he's still the Mashpia and we're still the Makabel. It's really good in all this to feed yourself spiritually, because when you feed yourself, then you can radiate it on the outside. Then your beauty is apparent. And there's this physical beauty we're talking about, and now I'm mentioning a spiritual beauty, and they really should merge. They really should converge. A beautiful person reflects a beautiful soul. And just like when a woman comes out from the mikvah, like the kala coming to the chuppah, it's a physical beauty that should be shining. It's a spiritual beauty that's shining. They both should be shining. And to be ready to receive. Again, that's the feminine modality. And it's a really big challenge for us because we live in a world that aggrandizes the masculine energy to such a degree that that's, in a sense, the whole feminist movement. The whole feminist movement is not bringing women up, it's actually putting women down. Because what the feminine movement is saying, I think, as I'm understanding it, is the best thing is to be a man. So we're all going to pretend we're men, and you should all treat us like men. And that's so sad. Because isn't the most beautiful celebration of a woman to be treated by a woman and to feel she's a woman and to celebrate being a woman? But we are products of a Western world. And therefore, even if inside of us we thought this was crazy, but we've lived in a world for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or 50 years or 60 years or 70 years, we've lived in a world that has always rewarded pretty consistently masculine modality in schools, in universities, in careers. That's always been what's been rewarded. That's always been what's been applauded. That's always been what's been held in esteem. And that's why sometimes we're just very feminine people naturally, so it doesn't bother us. But sometimes it's really hard for us to appreciate the specialness of being a woman and being in a feminine space. I think the difference I would say between, I'm going to take Fro's question. I just want to finish this thought. I'm going to take Fro's question. I think the difference is a feminine space is a space of being, not of doing, not of accomplishing, not of conquering, of being. That's a feminine space. It's a very non-American space. Being, receiving. And that's the space we enter through mikvah and we consummate through intimacy. The space of being, the space of receiving, not the space of doing. And we live in a world that all the stars go to the doing modality. And that's what we have to really, really, really open our eyes to understanding how beautiful it is to be a woman and celebrating being women. Firma, what was your question or comment?
So it's not, I mean, it's about women, not so much on this topic, but it's connected. But either way, the thing is, I feel like nowadays everyone wants to be feminine, even males, and you know, they're trying to be like accepting of this lower, I mean, obviously it's different, but they're trying to be accepting of like the lower, like Arabs, like they're trying, like people are trying to like lift those type of people up, like minorities, right? They're trying to bring up these people. I feel like it's a sign of Mashiach. Like, even though like, yes, they're minority and yes, they're not like trying to bring up the Jews and stuff, but they're trying to all tap into this femininity, like, right? So it's like Hashem's Malchus, like it's coming. I know it's totally messed up and it's not correct, obviously. It's a really
It depends how it's done. It's such a fine line. In other words, it's a very fine line between saying men are being celebrated for their femininity and saying a strong man could have these feminine qualities as well. It's a very fine line between something that's really good and something that's really bad. So it's
no. So what I'm saying
a very fine line, and there's good
no, it's a
and there's
bad
bad,
thing.
and it depends which side of the line you're standing on.
No, what I'm saying is it's like Mashiach's coming, so it's bringing awareness, I think, to this aspect, like the Malchus aspects, and because of that, isn't it true that everything's equal, right? There's an equilibrium. So because there's so much
Equal
you know,
and different.
ruchnius,
Equal and different. Equal doesn't mean the same. That's what I think the point I'm trying to make, that in the Western world, until now, equal meant the same. So we're all going to be men. We're going to be men with slightly different, but I mean, even if you think of like the Western world vision of beautiful, you know, if you think of a model in the Western world, is someone who's like starving themselves to really not have a very feminine body at all, to have a very masculine body and as little curves as possible, as much man-like as possible. I mean, it sounds very warped, but if you really think about it. So until now, with the feminine movement and with all those concepts, equal meant the same. Let's all be men, men with men's bodies and men with bodies that are wannabe men's bodies. So now if you're saying, well, it's going the other direction, again, equal should never be the same, but on a positive, and as you're saying, a Mashiach level, which I appreciate and I agree with what you're saying, Mashiach level means the energy of the woman, and the energy of the woman is the energy of the recipient, of absorbing the feminine dimension. And I agree with you that in a good way, not in an unhealthy way, not in a way that now we used to all be men, now we're all going to be women. No, that's not healthy either. That's not what God wants either. But for a man who's a man and understands he's a man, that knows his orientation and is utilizing his male abilities and finds within himself that receiving aspect, that's very Mashiach. You're absolutely right. That's very good. And that's very Mashiach. And because that really is a movement the whole world is going. It's not just for women. The whole world now is receiving the energy of Mashiach. So we all are supposed to be recipients, and you're absolutely right. And what Fromm is saying, which is so true, is that since we're so close to the redemption, we can tap into redemption energies and free ourselves and free our husbands of this whole exile mentality. And in an exile mentality, physical relationships are physical, and that's where they start and that's where they end. And we're saying, no, there's something actually far more physically pleasurable, far more physically meaningful, because they're a godly relationship where your mind is involved in the relationship, where your heart is involved in the relationship, where your soul is involved in the relationship, where your body is involved in the relationship. And it all comes together to create this magic, something that's meaningful and feels good on all levels. And when intimacy is like that, it renews the marriage. It's an absolute investment in the marriage. It's an absolute investment in everything the marriage is about, in the children, in the relationships between you that have nothing to do with the children. It is investing in your marriage. It takes time, takes effort. We're all tired. We all have too much on our plate. Why add more? You're investing. You're investing in your marriage. And when your marriage works, the house works. And the energy of the house works. So you don't have to waste your time with all the problems with this one and this one and this one and this one, because it's working much, much more, because the marriage is working. It starts from the core and it trickles down to the whole house. Anyone else have any comments on this? So someone mentioned last week, I wanted to share, we were talking about the idea of the child and how the child is formed and impacted by many things. We spoke about the idea of how the child is very affected by the thoughts of the parents, of both parents, during conception. We spoke of how the child is impacted by everything you experience during the 9 months when they're in utero, in the womb. We spoke that the month the child was born impacts, the day the child was conceived impacts, the day the child was born impacts. And we said the day of the week. And I said that in the Talmud, it's explained for most of the days of the week, how they affect the energy of the child. So I was asked to share that, so I'm going to bring that in now. Now, the whole perspective of the Talmud is based on something that we sort of know, but never really probably thought of that much. Every day of the week, in its core, goes back to creation. Meaning today, for those of us that forgot, is Wednesday. In the core of today is the energy of Wednesday of creation. And it's true for every single day of the week, meaning every week, the cycle of creation happens again. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. The one that's most popularized, I'm sure most of you have heard of it, is the idea of like, oh, it's good to do that on a Tuesday because Tuesday's double good. Oh, you're getting married on a Tuesday. Oh, you're doing that party on the Tuesday. That's good because Tuesday's double good. So that's something like for some reason clicked with our world. I don't know why more than anything else. And what do you mean Tuesday's double good? 5,782 years ago, it was double good. What does that have to do with today? Because within yesterday, Tuesday's energy in its core is creation. And 5,782 years ago, the first Tuesday of creation, it was double good every Tuesday ever since. Or a different dimension of understanding this, our sages say that someone who passes away on a Friday, that's a very good sign. Why? Because the first Friday of creation, Adam, man's passing away was really the deep sleep from which Chava, his wife, was born, and from which came children, which came eternity. So that sleep like death was really positive. And that was on Friday. So since then, every Friday since, we're revisiting that same energy. That's the core of any Friday. And so therefore passing on a Friday is a blessed sign. So why am I saying this? Because the Talmud, when it speaks about a child being born, and it speaks about each day of the week, so I'm not going to necessarily explain the connections, but most of the thoughts, Sunday through Friday, have to do with what was created each day. So I'm going to go through them. You're going to obviously quickly think about your kids and when they were born, which day, and if you see it or if you don't. So I'll give you a second to think of your children and their days of the week of being born, not their birthdays, the day of the week they were born, if you can remember. All right, hopefully we're all focused now. Sunday, for all your Sunday children out there. It says in the Gemara that someone born Sunday is a leader. And the Gemara writes, it could be a leader for bad or a leader for good. But Sundays are leaders. Monday. A child born Monday has a certain anger. If any kids with anger issues, try to remember what day of the week they were born. Because Monday has a certain anger. Goes back to my creation. Again, Sunday is light and darkness. That's the leader for good, leader for bad. Monday was the separation of the waters. That's a energy of gevura, of strength, of withholding, which is, so it doesn't have to necessarily be anger. It's really any of those energies, though the term the sages use for it is anger. Tuesday, it says, is someone who, that child born on a Tuesday should be wealthy. And the child born on a Tuesday also is going to have a, let's call it a struggle at least, of someone that naturally goes after his desires. Now, keep in mind something else. By the Jewish day, the day starts the night before, as you're thinking of your children. So Sunday night is already Monday energy. Monday night is Tuesday energy. Tuesday night is Wednesday energy. Just because I know as a mother, you right away think of your kids and you see if they match. Oh, so that's why, just to make it very, very clear. Wednesday is wise and luminous, just as Wednesday is when the luminaries were formed. So children born Tuesday night, Wednesday, naturally from the day, again, that doesn't take away what you were thinking or your husband was during conception. It doesn't take away the power of the month. That doesn't take away the date. It's another dimension. There are many dimensions. Wise and luminous. There's something luminous about those Wednesday children. Thursday, Wednesday night, Thursday is a child that would naturally gravitate toward kindness. It's the energy of kindness. Thursday, which would mean Wednesday night, Thursday. And Friday is, it says, as children that run after doing good deeds, run after mitzvahs. So Thursday night, Friday are the kids that like to go and do all the mitzvahs. And Shabbos does not relate to creation. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday did. Shabbos does not relate to creation. Shabbos, it says that someone who's born on Shabbos probably will pass away on Shabbos. So that's coming from a totally different angle of understanding the power of that day. Any questions, any thoughts on any of this?
It's weird because both my kids, one of my kids was born on, I think, a Monday, and the other one was a Friday. And what you said, I feel like was the opposite for each kid.
Okay, it could be. And as I'm saying, these are the words of the Talmud. So they're true, but they're not the only part of the child's reality. For me, actually, I've gone through this with each one of my kids, and actually it's very, very accurate. I see it in all of them. Obviously, besides the Shabbos kids, I have a few Shabbos kids. Those are nothing to see. But besides the ones born on a Shabbos, I actually really see Sunday through Friday, I see it. But that doesn't mean you're going to see it. There's a lot of other pieces. As I said, your thoughts and your husband's thoughts during conception impact the child. The date impacts the child. The month impacts the child. And the day of the week impacts the child. Then there's something very cool, which is looking, as I've looked with many people, at a book the Lubavitcher put together called Hayom Yom, which is a thought for each day of the year. And very often, not always, but very often when you look at the Hayom Yom that has to do with a person, their birthday or their wedding anniversary or whatever, just different significant milestone dates in a person's life, you can sometimes really see, oh, wow, That's the energy of the day. That's them. It's their energy. Very obvious. Not always, not always. Sometimes very obvious. Any other thoughts on any of this? Okay, wait, I see someone just sent a text. I think it's, what should you do about it? Let's say you're like, I see it, Monday, anger, I see it, so now what? I think the so now what is understanding. This is the, I think that the so now what is understanding this is part of the child's energy. And as the mother, again, you can talk about yourself also, this is my energy or this is my child's energy. And as such, I want to give them the tools to properly deal with it. Because this is them. Now, again, I'm totally open to what Firma said, and I'm saying she's wrong, you know, you're misunderstanding your children. No, as I said, there's the layer of the thoughts of conception. There's the layer of the soul of the child that has nothing to do with any of this. There's the month that impacts both of conception and of birth, the date that impacts both of conception and of birth, and there's the day of the week. And this is Talmud. This isn't, you know, pop psychology. They figured out that Mondays, this is Torah talking. You might not see it as obvious. It could be a more covert anger, but it's good it's good. And if it's someone understands themselves that way, again, it's a piece of understanding. It's funny. I have one of my children that I have with a few of my children that the Hayom Yom, the thought for the day, is like them bullseye. And more than once on a certain child's birthday, when I do the Hayom Yom, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so-and-so. Now, you might say it's not a very complimentary aspect of the person. It really isn't, but it's totally that child. And like so many years, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just read the Hayom Yom. It's so you. And the child says, Ma, you tell me this every year. I'm like, how do I forget every year? Every year I'm in awe of like seeing you written right there on the page. Is it saying how great and amazing he is? No, it's saying the work he has to do. It's saying his struggle. It's saying his challenge. And when I read it and I understand, it's not that he messed up. It's not that I messed up. It's the energy of the day. It's not that God messed up. This is the day his soul came down for a reason. This is his energy. This is his challenge. This is his struggle. I want him to be aware of it. And I, as the mother, also want to be aware of the energy, struggle, challenge, because I want to help. So if you know your child, let's give this example, has an issue with anger, you want to model how to handle anger. You want to talk about tools for anger. You can talk about your own issues, how you most deal with anger. If that's not your issue, you could talk about other people you know and how they deal with it, share stories. You want to educate them and put lots of tools in their toolbox, how to deal with something that it's not their fault, but it's them. I see two people's hands raised. I also see some chats. I want to respond to the chats, but otherwise I'll forget. And then I'm going to take the two hands that are raised. Sure. Now, someone just said, I'm going to respond to someone asked a question, which was actually to repeat this. I'm going to repeat it briefly because maybe it was too fast. But someone said, well, what if it's me? Yes, I was born on a Monday, and actually I do realize I have that issue. Now what? Now what is, first of all, don't bash yourself. It's the day God chose for your soul to come into this world. And the Talmud is saying this is going to be a struggle. Don't worry, I wasn't born on a Monday. I got different struggles. We all have struggles. We all have reasons why we're in this world. We all have challenges. And now you look at yours and you can be honest and say, oh, I do recognize myself in that mirror. So now I have to work on it. Because if this was one of the reasons why my soul's in this world, I don't want to blow it. I want to be focused. I want to understand it. I can embrace it as one of the reasons I'm here. And I want to create tools to deal with it, not pretend I don't have it. So I'm going to go through it again one more time in case anyone missed them because I maybe said a little too fast. And I'm going to take 2 questions. I also want to do something about the parsha. Sunday, a leader. The Gemara says explicitly for good or bad, but a leader. So I'll give a personal application for that. My Dove bear my 8-year-old with Down syndrome, was born on a Sunday. And right away I said, he's going to be a leader. Now that gave me a lot of vision for him and a lot of hope for him, because you could say, oh, he has Down syndrome. And I say, he was born on a Sunday. He's going to be a leader. So I want to educate him to be that leader. He's the only one of my children born on a Sunday. I want to educate him to live up to that ability, because it's part of his ability. It's when he was born. So as we look at the child and think of that day, again, it guides us in what we want to do to help that child. Well, obviously we've said several times now, Monday, anger, but again, understand where they got it from. Separation of the waters. So it could be viewed as strength, discrimination, discernment, anger. Tuesday, rich, and naturally goes after tivus, naturally goes after indulgences. If you don't recognize that in the child or yourself, well, maybe it's very submerged or was healed by other things, but that's the nature of the day. Wednesday, wise and luminous. Wednesday means Tuesday night. All of these means the night before. So Tuesday night, Wednesday, wise and luminous. If you're born in the winter, Tuesday night comes quite early. Tuesday night, Wednesday, wise and luminous. Thursday, kindness. Friday, naturally runs to do good deeds. And Shabbos, if you were born on Shabbos, it's very likely you will pass away on Shabbos. Dina.
So I actually have two questions on this. The first one is that I notice some days are positive traits and some days maybe are more negative. And does that mean that the days with positive traits don't have negative traits in their energy, or don't have specifically stated negative traits in their energy? Or does that just mean that we just didn't cover it?
No, what it means is the Gemara is saying this is the core energy of the day. That's like I said about Monday, because anger sounds very negative. Though, of course, you could use anger to serve God. But in general, it sounds pretty negative. But if you understand where it's coming from, which was the idea of the Gevura, God's judgment. It's a day of God's judgment. Separating the waters was judgment, was a certain harshness.
Uh-huh.
So that's expressed in a person. Now, the most natural it's expressed could be with anger. It could be a person who has a lot of self-judgment for good or for bad. It could be in the positive side, if this person really works on themselves, or they're just naturally very holy, a person who's very introspective, because an introspective person is also doing a lot of self-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, but like when they're saying kindness, okay, Thursday is kindness. Does it mean that every child born on Thursday is going to be a saint? No, you could be kind and not a saint at all. Or you could be very good, but not naturally kind. You do the kindness that you're supposed to do because God, gave us a lot of rules that have to do with kindness, but it doesn't mean you're naturally a kind person. Now, if you do those rules enough times, it helps you become more kind.
Mm-hmm.
But natural kindness is a Thursday baby. Wednesday night, Thursday.
Okay.
Natural desire to run after good is a Thursday night, Friday. The person, again, all of us, doesn't take away our free choice. Use it for good, use it for bad. We have our free choice, but there's a certain natural affinity to these energies. But as I'm saying, every month impacts the energy. Every date impacts the energy. How we started off, when we got to this, we were like tangentially discussing it. The parents' connection to God during the conception of the child so impacts the child's energy. The parent's emotional mood during conception, happy, content, secure, loving, angry, upset, sulking, that affects a lifetime for a child. If you are still in a position where you conceive children, keep it in mind. It's critically affecting your child forever. And as we said, we can repent that, and we can try, specifically in intimacy, to heal some of our children that maybe our minds and souls weren't engaged, or maybe we're in a very bad mood and it tremendously impacted our child. Fruma.
So you were saying about Monday being anger. Is it also like emotional, like the water separation? You know what I mean? Like it's emotions, or is it specifically only anger?
It's the idea of, well, I mean, I didn't make it up. The Talmud says anger, but they explain why. Anger as an expression of that separation. Gevura, think of it as gevura. There's a gevura in Monday. In other words, to take this a step deeper, just to explain a little bit, but I really want to talk about the parsha, just a drop, hopefully, we'll see. Creation impacted every day of the whole world forever. Today was Wednesday. The energy of Wednesday, luminous, affects every Wednesday. Every day of creation impacted a millennium, 1,000 years. The world has a mandate of 7,000 years. And that mandate comes from the week of creation. Why does these 7 days have so many power? I mean, we know God created the world then, but like that was 5,782 years ago. Why does it still have so much power? The reason why it has so much power, the reason why it affects a child born 5,782 years later, the reason why I created a millennium of history is because every day was really embodying one of God's emotions. God, who's obviously beyond emotion, to say he's beyond intellect, he's God, but he puts himself within vehicles of intellect and vehicles of emotion. And he has 7 primary emotions, and therefore so do we. God creates with emotion. God relates with emotion, so do we. So every one of the 7 days of creation was embodying another emotion of God. Everything that was created on that day reflects that emotion. And the energy of that emotion creates 1,000 years of our history. And therefore, that energy is still within that day of the week and affects the souls that are coming to this world then. So is it like, well, the soul doesn't have an anger issue, but then it comes to the world on a Monday and bang? No, obviously there's a reason why this soul comes on a Monday. Maybe Monday is a magnet for that soul, and that soul would never enter the world on a Monday. That's a luminous soul. That soul's coming on a Wednesday. That soul and Wednesday converge. I'll try to give you like one example just of what I'm saying, because, just so it should be clear what I'm saying. So the first day of creation was created, according to our sages, actually everything. Everything was created on the first day. And for the next week, God just like organized it, cleaned up his house, put things in order. Also, the ultimate sun was created on that day. A sun, we're told, so bright that you can't use it. It got hidden. That's for the righteous, for Mashiach. The sun we use today was formed or put into place on Wednesday. But the ultimate supercharged nova sun was Sunday. And that relates to the energy of Sunday, because the energy of Sunday is God's absolute, infinite, overpowerful kindness, loving, giving. And therefore, everything was created then, but it's just pure giving, giving, giving. So it was very chaotic. And therefore, the sun was super powerful, total giving, not even a giving we could receive. We can't live with such a sun, not till Mashiach. And that created a millennium of history, the first millennium, when people lived for hundreds and hundreds of years. And people had absolute health. Absolute health. Longevity meaning 600, 700, 900 years. That's longevity. That was like the energy of Sunday, but a lot of chaos. People couldn't handle it. Just pure giving, giving, giving. Man couldn't deal with that properly. That's why we morphed into Monday. Monday was God's gevura, God's withholding, intense withholding. How did that play out on creation? The separation of the waters. These become the upper waters. These become the lower waters. Separation, withholding. How did that play out in that millennium? The great flood, most incredible punishment the world has ever received, killed out all but 9 members of humanity. Punishment, intense power of judgment, and with water. What else happened in that millennium? What else happened with that millennium? The Tower of Babel was also in that millennium. Also pretty intense judgment of God. All of mankind separated, separation, judgment in that millennium, huge judgment. Prior to the flood, God forewarned us, like gave mankind a message that we conveniently ignored. God gave a very massive punishment. Says the Mediterranean rose up, flooded the Middle East, which is where all mankind lived at that point, and a third of humanity died. A third of mankind died with a flood, with water in that millennium. So we see water and tremendous judgment. Then we see the great flood, more water and even greater judgment. And then we see the Tower of Babylonia, tremendous judgment, tremendous separation. That was the millennium. So this is the idea. It's an energy of God. It expresses itself in that day of creation. It expresses itself in that millennium. And it's the core energy of that day of the week forever. And that's why it impacts our children. But again, there's a convergence between the child that's going to be born on a Monday and the energy of Monday. Child that's going to be born on a Sunday and the energy of Sunday.
Quick question. That's all it says about a baby born on Shabbos? You kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah, that's all it says. I have a
was
number
waiting for
of
you to
children
say
born on
something, like,
Shabbos.
amazing.
I think I have at least 3 Shabbos babies.
I have one, and I was like, yeah.
So I think the reason for it is that's what I said. Shabbos is not like the other 6, because it's very clear, and the sages explain, Sunday through Friday all connect to creation. Shabbos is for a very different reason. They say Shabbos, the child born on Shabbos caused the desecration of Shabbos by his birth, and therefore will pass away and cause desecration of Shabbos by his death.
Oh, that's awful.
That's the cycle of life. It closes, it comes to a complete circle. And as we mentioned before, again, for reasons that have to do with creation, if you could pick the day to pass away, the best day our sages say is Friday.
Mhm.
So if any of you know anyone that passed away on Friday, it's like, wow, I didn't realize they were that holy. There's a very special energy, specifically, not passing on Shabbos, passing on Friday.
Yeah, my
I
uncle is
also heard-
actually born on Shabbos and died on Shabbos.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yep.
No, but I always heard that dying on Shabbos was like meaning you're a tzaddik or something. Someone told me that years ago.
No. No. It's interesting. It says actually in the Midrash that King David, who understood the truth, he wanted to die on Friday. Now, King David had a lot of pull. You know, he was one of the greatest souls of all times. So he asked God to die on a Friday because that's the best day to die. And God said, I would rather you live one more day. King David died on a Shabbos. I would rather you live one more day and serve me that one more day. That is more worth it to me than 1,000 offerings that your son Solomon's going to offer in the temple. One day of your prayers is more than 1,000 offerings. So you want to die, like you want to die on a Friday because it's more convenient for you? Excuse me, I want you to live one more day, serve me one more day. Okay, you're gonna die on a Shabbos, not as good. It's more worth it than 1,000 offerings I'm gonna get from Solomon. So no, actually, I know people sometimes think that, but actually it's written very clearly. The best day, not that we pick these things, just like you say, oh, I want my child born on Wednesday. Well, guess what? Tuesday night, Wednesday, it's what God wants.
Mrs. Turing, can you be induced on a day that you like? Can you choose what day you want to be induced on?
You absolutely could if you're getting induced. Obviously, we hope that someone doesn't have to get induced, but if you are getting induced, you could say, I would like it on the best day possible for my child on every level, which is the date and the month. Well, month, you're probably not going to have much choice in. There's the day of the week and there's also the date. These things are very significant. I was speaking to a woman who's unfortunately going through a very, 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 very messy divorce. Unfortunately. And she was telling me, since it's such a messy divorce, her husband, not ex yet, has been doing everything he can to push off the court proceedings. Finally, they have a court date. So just being me, I'm like, what's the date? So she told me, I looked it up. It's like in the Chabad calendar, it's one of the holiest days of the year. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't say I'm glad he pushed it off, but this is such a great day to start your court proceedings. This is like amazing. This is such awesome energy. It's just going to put the whole thing, which he definitely needs in the situation, totally supernaturally good for you. So if one has a choice to pick, one always tries to pick a good day of the week, good date, of course, we always try to do that. So if you unfortunately are going to be induced, go for the best date you can. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I'm just going to say, I had this really nice, long, beautiful thought from the Parsha. I'm going to try to scrunch it into like a minute. And if anyone has to go off, that's totally fine. This is the post. So you also have a Dvar Torah, a beautiful thought to give over at the Shabbos table. Your children should know and you should model. So this week's Torah portion is Bo. And just one idea, which could be long, but I'm going to make it very short. So in Friday's Torah portion of Bo, it discusses it's going to be like imminently, the Jews are going to be leaving Egypt. And Moshe tells the Jews in God's name that they should go around now and gather from the Egyptians the gold, the silver, the clothing. Remember, we said clothing is important, beautiful clothing. Get all that beautiful stuff from Egypt. Gather it all. And the verse says that God made a miracle here, because the verse says, and God gave grace for the Jewish people in the eyes of the Egyptians. And they gave them all their gold. Oh, you want? Sure. You want this also? Beautiful. You want this? Yeah, take. So the question is, what's going on here? So on one level, well, God had promised that we were going to leave Egypt very wealthy, and God obviously was going to fulfill his promise. So we did. But if that was the whole purpose of it, then why did God have to make this extra miracle? You could say some miracles are floating around, then who cares? But God still likes to be conservative with miracles. He doesn't like to break nature if he doesn't have to. Why did he make this extra miracle? That God made the Egyptians like us. These were the Egyptians that hated us before and after. But during those hours, the Egyptians loved us. Oh, you want? Sure. I mean, if the whole purpose is just as proper payment for 116 years of slavery, they didn't have to like us to give it to us. They would have given it anyway. They've been terrified of us. So the answer is that the giving, God didn't want it to be done in a way of like, here, I'll give this, just get out of here. Coercement, force. God wanted the Egyptians, of course, here it's superimposed because it was a miracle, to be part of the process of us serving God. Because when we came to the Egyptians, and we did, we're all reincarnations of that generation. So we did it, we just forgot. When we came to the Egyptians and said, can I have that, those goblets, that jewelry, those nice dresses? And they said, sure, you're going to serve God. We want to be part of the process. Take it more. I have a few more nice dresses that I think could fit you. Take them as well. What the Egyptians were doing, not from their own volition, God created a miracle here, was saying we're part of the process. The physical's here to serve God. The physical's here to be part of the spiritual. And that's what happened then. Now, by the Exodus, there was a lot of miracles God made. Like God made Moses talk. He couldn't speak for spiritual reasons, way too much godly energy to fit into a voice. God superimposed that and he spoke. The Egyptians didn't like us. God made a miracle. They loved us for a few hours. The idea is now at the end of the line, as we've mentioned several times actually tonight, that all of this already should have so penetrated the world through us serving God through the past 3,333 years that it's natural. That naturally the world wants to be part of serving God, which sort of relates to what Firmin was saying before about how people are accessing a more feminine, receptive energy. That the world naturally is in a space of wanting to do goodness, wanting to do kindness, wanting to be part of the process of serving God. There's a lot of like spirituality in the world and spiritual awareness in the world. There's a lot of people that want to help the Jews. There's enormous movements in this world to help the Jewish people. Primary donor to Israel and pulling strings to get Congress to help Israel is very fundamentalist Christian organizations. So there's movements now of the world saying, we want to be part of the process. We want to be on board. We want to help you serve God. That's what we're already holding. That was a brief rendition of the thought. You shall have wonderful Divrei Torah to always impress your children with. And thank you so much for joining. Have a great week and hopefully take this idea and use it. use it to enhance every aspect of your life, making it more beautiful, more meaningful, more loving, and much, much better.
Amen.